Hello everyone, welcome to our review of Alien Isolation. I'm Nick.
I'm Andrew.
And let's just dive right into it, starting with the aesthetics of the game. And, you know, as someone who played the game for most of the month, I really did enjoy the aesthetics because especially...
Enjoy the aesthetics, Nick?
I enjoyed them only from a sound design standpoint. Again, this is a game that is a survival horror game. Early in the game, we're on the original ship before we get to the station. The halls felt a bit claustrophobic.
Your butthole was clenched on the beginning where there's no alien.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's effective.
That's how you know it's effective. And I will say this is a game you definitely have to play with headphones.
Yeah.
Because it immerses you that much more into it, because just hearing the vents open and close caused me to lose my mind. And that is really, really wonderful that they paid enough attention to just the sound design of the vents closing to say, how can we make the sound as close to the Xenomorph as we can without it being the actual Xenomorph.
The actual Xenomorph, yep.
And it makes you feel, A, you're not alone, but also B, that you're in danger at any time, even before the Xenomorph shows up.
All of the sounds that are occurring on the ship are Xenomorph adjacent, possible Xenomorph sounds, and you're not quite sure. They played that trick of, is it a Xenomorph or is it just a vent? You have to be very careful. And then vents will open, and you'll be just a little too close to it, and you'll be like, oh god, it was just a vent.
Well, yeah, that happened to me a few times in the game. So again, from a sound design, the aesthetics just from the sound design alone, were fantastic. And it's a game that, again, because it has really good sound design, its levels felt like a maze. It's easy, and I think it's obviously part of the purpose of the game, where, you know, it's easy to overlook things like overlooking the vent in the floor, overlooking the little keyboard on the desk to disengage the defense mechanism for the room that we were in the last playthrough episode. That also goes into design where the things like not in your face, like, okay, I know I gotta do this. It does a great job of forcing you to explore because it knows you're scared.
It knows you're scared, and you're trying to
it.
find every possible way out, and it's like, I'm gonna make this as difficult for you to find as possible, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I will say.
Yes.
It has its pros and its cons.
It's pros and its cons. You know, you could, for example, as a con, it could have maybe benefited from a little bit of like a map in the beginning.
Getting the scanner at the beginning would have been way better, in my opinion, just because one of the issues that you experienced early on, if we would have gotten the scanner in the beginning, it would have been easier to find where you need to go next.
Right.
One last moment on aesthetics. You mentioned the claustrophobia.
Yeah.
It's very dark.
Yep.
Which is a boon for this game, because you have flashlights, because you have light sources. Like, there was that one time that you got really scared by that guy running by, and you're like, oh, it's a Xenomorph! And I was like, it's not the Xenomorph. To myself, I was like, it's not the Xenomorph. But I think that the lighting, the design is very accurate to the original, so kudos to them. Great work on set design. And it's dark in all the right places to where you're like, should I be staring down this corridor? Something's gonna run out of that hole, isn't it? You know, very, very great visual and auditory design. Phenomenal in that regard.
And one last thing before we move on to the actual controls of the game. Going through the vents, again, adding to that claustrophobia feel, but also you don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
You don't know if anything's in there. And you don't know where the thing will lead, because it could literally, you could go in a vent and drop down, and then there could be somebody or the Xenomorph below, and you just
holding
don't
out its
know.
arms, waiting to nibble on you.
And you don't know when you're climbing out of a vent, and you're like, ooh, should I do this? I don't know if I should do this.
Back in the hole.
Yeah, should I wait here a little bit? Yeah, so I think aesthetically, it really, really great job. Sega did a really, really great job in terms of the aesthetics. Moving on to the controls. Very, very simple control layout. Turn on the light, you press, Y. We did play on the Xbox. And I will say, playing this on a console compared to a PC, we didn't play on PC. I wonder what the difference would be like.
Runs smoother.
Probably. But in terms of the controls, they're simple to a point. When it came to having to make med kits or going into your inventory, you had to hold L, B, and B at the same time. And there was a time in one of the early episodes
we were trying to figure that out.
we're trying to figure it out.
And it's not intuitive.
And it's not intuitive because you have to literally hit them at the same time. It's something that could have been moved to the D-pad.
Yeah.
It's something that, hey, if I hold up on the D-pad, I pull my weapons. I mean, there were times I was literally pulling out flares and had to use flares because I didn't know how to put them back. Yeah, and that sucked. Luckily, I didn't need them for the places that I used them and pulled them out. But it's just one of those things where, like, I couldn't imagine being later in the game, especially when there's like a Xenomorph or when like power is cut into a certain part of the station and you need to use flares.
Yeah.
How annoying and frustrating that could be, where you're like, okay, I accidentally pull out my flare, how do I put it back now? And the thing that sucks is that even if you go on the controls, I believe it didn't show anything of like put flare back or do anything like that.
There wasn't any option.
There wasn't any option for that. It didn't show any commands for that. It was just very, basic. Like, here's how you use your light, here's how to use your gun, and here's how to move, and so on and so forth. That could have been much better.
Clearer. Yeah. I will say that the left bumper to pull up the menu to craft, I understand the intent. They didn't want you to pause the game and have the ability to craft something. And the reason for that is they want to make you make decisions, right?
Right.
I need to be hiding so I can craft this thing so I can get my health back in high-stress situations with the alien. But a much more efficient system, like you said, would be to put it on the D-pad, still have the game running in the background, but when did you use the D-pad? I don't remember.
Pretty much
using
never.
The D-pad. Exactly. Just as they intend, they want the game to be running while you are crafting. I feel like the most important thing would to be put it a simple button press so that I can select options. Oh, there's my med kit. I'm going to make a med kit. The game's still running in the background. I'm not paused in a menu to craft this thing. So that mitigates that issue, but to do a double button press, it does not facilitate ease of use for individuals with disabilities.
Right, and going back to the whole D-pad thing, the only time I used it was when I was trying to figure out what to do for the controls.
What those buttons actually could have done, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of the level of accessibility in this game, not a whole lot, but but again, this is to go back to the Alan Wake review we did, where I discussed Super Mario Odyssey. There's accessibility and simplicity, and I like that. Hey, turn on a light just by hitting Y.
There are simple.
Cool.
There are
some simple controls. The way they were laid out and being able to go deeper into the layout of the controls is something that I felt was missing from the game.
Yeah.
They're, of course, making subtitles bigger and doing different various things where it could have been more beneficial to have it in this game. Again, it being a first person, I don't know how that would affect having put in certain accessibility things for being a first person game. I would say, like, the only thing maybe they could have added was, outside of a colorblind mode, but just to maybe add to something like a colorblind mode, maybe like a thermal mode or something like that, where maybe you could pick up on certain things and not have to use things in just like the regular grayish kind of palette that the game gives you. Maybe little indicators above the people's heads, like a Sims kind of thing. Just visually speaking, just stuff like that. I know this is a survival game. I know some people listening to this might be, hey, it might take away from it being a survival game. But at the end of the day, though, everybody's playthrough, everybody's style is going to be different for what they need. And I think just giving people those options, it's one of those things where it's like, it's better to have it in the game and not use it than need it and not have it. And so there's just some options like that maybe could have been utilized in the game. Of course, button layouts. It would have been nice to pull out the revolver and, again, move all the shooting controls of that to one side. Stuff like that is something I'm always going to advocate for.
Yeah, modifying controls is a standard that has to be set in the industry. This is in the year one of the Xbox One, but that is the most recent previous generation. There are games in that generation that did do full button remapping. There isn't an excuse.
Now, I think it's important to say that you can change the layouts, but not like remap them yourselves. Yeah. It was more of just presets. Yeah. It was preset different ones. So like instead of, your running would be one button, it would be a different button. Instead of crouching would be the right stick or whatever it was, it's, B or something.
I feel that simplicity would have been this game's best friend. I think that having that menu, the LBB thing, is just, it's obnoxious. And then you get into that menu, and it wants you to press LB again. I don't know, it just doesn't feel as intuitive as it could have been. And I think that does negatively impact the overall experience. I understand the design philosophy from a gameplay standpoint of wanting you to feel rushed when making a med kit if the alien's charging you, right? Or if an android's coming after you. But again, D-pad. D-pad wasn't used. Could have been put on the D-pad and still had the same effect in place of the game still active while I'm crafting this thing and the alien's rushing me kind of shit.
And one thing I would have liked to, from an accessibility standpoint of how this game could have been more accessible, is the fact of, we've mentioned this in a couple episodes during the playthrough, when you go to a door and then having be like, hold left trigger and then like down on the stick, or stuff like that.
Unnecessary mini games.
I understand that you want to make this kind of feel like, oh, you actually are opening the lever to a door and stuff like that. I understand that. But again, it would have been much easier where you could have that, but also give people the option of
turning it off.
Or doing like in Mortal Kombat, where instead of having to go like up, up, down, down, whatever to do a fatality, you could have been, hey, instead of holding the left trigger and like down on the stick, you could just press A or press B or just click the left stick in.
Yeah.
And it would open the door and unlock the hatch and stuff like that, take the little locks off the doors.
Simplicity is your best friend.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to a survival game.
Things that I will praise control-wise, I loved, and it's something you rarely see, peeking.
Yeah.
The peeking is phenomenal. I love that as an option in this game. It adds to the experience. Once you get the scanner, I like being able to pull that up and have that as an option consistently. Flashlight is there are some very specific gems when it comes to the control scheme, but several of the options could have been simplified.
What I liked about the controls for the most part is that they were very reactive. There wasn't a lot of lag that I experienced while using any of the weapons or melees or anything like that. It felt very responsive, and I like that the running kind of felt a little bit loose. It wasn't too tight when you're running down the corridors or crouching or anything like that. I thought that was very, very, very well done. And with that being said, let's move on to our grades.
Overall, and in our review, we only get through a certain portion of the game. And depending on the type of game, sometimes it can take... I mean, this just took longer because we had a little bit of difficulty in the beginning figuring out where the fuck we were supposed to go. But for a game like this, I think it is very much worth experiencing and going through the story and learning. I think that this game has a lot of things down the line, just from my own experience of playing the game way back when. I got like midway through the game. There's a lot of things that this game has for gamers in general, and in strategies on how to be stealthy and all that kind of stuff. I personally think that this game is worth a press start, though the controls in some cases are difficult. LBB, even for me, it's just not intuitive. There are some unintuitive controls. I still think that the atmosphere and the experience of playing this game, as well as the majority of controls being simple, it definitely makes it worth playing. I love spooky games, even though I'm scared shitless by them. And clearly, my buddy over here has a little bit more difficulty with the spookies, but it's a particular type of horror, and I think that it does a really good job of balancing its atmosphere and making you feel like you have availability to hide, to be in a corner, or to be out of a sight line, and that sort of thing.
I will say this, the accessibility could have been increased, but to piggyback off what you said about just the atmosphere, this was a game where, yes, I don't do horror games all that well. However, this game, on its aesthetics and its atmosphere alone, is something that I would honestly, like, even when we're done playing this game, I wouldn't mind playing this on my own, or us sitting together off mic and just playing it and finishing it.
Do you need me to hold your hand?
Maybe. Although I would need one free because I only have the one, and I would need to...
I could play, and I'll hold your hand with my foot.
Okay, perfect. But this is just a game where it's like, yeah, I would like to revisit it. I cannot give this an average just because, I mean, for people who just watched the episodes and just the little previews we put at the beginning of each episode, there were some memorable moments. Yep. I had people like watching our stuff and texting me like, "Hey, I watched your video and I was fucking laughing because of your reaction." Like, I got people messaging me and be like, "Oh my god, this is great."
This game genuinely affects you in a way that's not just like, "Ooh, jump scare." It's like, it's a very tense game, and the atmosphere is really what sells it.
Exactly.
On that, you know.
And again, the controls are simple enough to where I can manage. Yes, there's some things like the LBB are not the best thing.
Killer.
Yes. But that being said, with everything else, this is a press start for me. This is something that it's on Game Pass. Download it off of Game Pass.
It's free.
It's free.
If you don't like it, well, delete it.
Delete it. But again, we both give this thing a press start, and that's going to do it for our review of Alien Isolation. As always, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon to receive notifications when new videos go up every Sunday and Wednesday. And also be sure to hit us up and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/reviewcade. And for those of you who are also on Twitter and on Instagram, we're there as well. You can find us at reviewcade on both Instagram and on Twitter. And if you have a game request, reviewcade@gmail.com. Be sure to email us your requests. We'll play them on the show and give our input throughout a certain month. But that's going to do it for our review of Alien Isolation. And as always, we will see you next month with a brand new game.
Next time on Reviewcade.